Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is called to order, and I will ask our city clerk to call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a brief moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the January 25th, 2022 meeting and the agenda of the February 8th, 2022 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have one presentation on today's agenda, and I'd like to invite our Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Frank Carson, and Recreation Services Supervisor, Tim O'Malley, to tell us about this. Hi, Frank.
Okay. Tim and I will be doing a brief presentation on Wells Park updates, just giving you a brief update. We've given you previous updates since 2017 from the master plan as well as others, but this is more of a human factor update. We felt it was important at this time to bring this before you. So just to recap, in May of 2017, City Manager Doug Williford presented before City Council a master plan. It was a phase 1, 2, and 3 master plan. Phase 3 was definitely a work in progress or something of a draft or living document, meaning there's many transitional things that would happen between now and then. We are definitely moving into phase 3 of that master plan that was presented back in May of 2017. Just some highlights of some infrastructure that has happened at Wells Park. We have the fitness area from the Indian Gaming Local Benefit Committee grant. We have the Cajon Playground grant that went through there. The California State Housing Related Parks grant, where we expanded the dog agility course, added new park lighting, added new fencing. We did get reinforced fencing around different parts of the perimeter, as you can see, and we'll briefly talk about that. We had a new sewer lateral put in there. The public safety substation was put there through Prop O funds. Perimeter fencing and entry gates, and all of this we can definitely thank our public works team, not only the Parks Division, but all the engineers, specifically Sinan Kachi, who's done a lot of these projects for us. The parking lot lighting, I already got the Cajon Playground grant. It was so good we did it twice. Actually, we had a second Cajon Playground grant where we did enhancements later on in 2019, where we did some art projects in the grant, so it was a $10,000 grant that we did in there later on. And then more recently, we did the Target grant for the mini pitch soccer court. All of you were on the video for that, so I know you remember that one. Some upcoming projects that our public works team will be working on are the basketball courts, some stormwater treatment there through Prop 1 funding, as well as restroom renovation. So the original master plan came about when it was presented before council in May of 2017, talking about the 2015 and 2016 calls for service. And I have to be careful when I present these to you because I'm not a crime analyst, and this is raw data. I can't really tell you why certain numbers are certain ways, and so again, I want to be cautious with presenting this information, but these are good numbers to at least look at to give you an idea of extrapolating some data. So really in 2015 is what really sparked our concern within the city. 916 calls for service. And when you see officer initiated, this means either a patrol unit made contact or some type of foot patrol made contact. So in those calls for service, that 274 of those are officer initiated. So it is decreased to a certain extent. But if you look at it from in 2015, same cities, City of Chula Vista had 150 calls for service at their highest peak park, and the City of San Diego had roughly 125 calls for service at their highest peak park. So we recognize that we needed to do something when we saw this data, and it was presented before you at City Council in May of 2017. So if you look at it, May of 2017, or in 2017, we had a lot of officer-initiated contacts, then over 1,000 calls for service. going all the way down to 2020. And if you look at it, you had 804 officer-initiated contacts. And a lot of that has to do with what I'll be presenting about in just a minute. And that's really something that our police department working with us, so Parks and Recreation, Parks Division, as well as Public Works, they encouraged us to go through CPTED, or Crime Prevention through Environmental Design training, through the National Institute of Crime Prevention. And there's the first year is a 2-day training. I'm not going to go into all 2 days for you, but to give you kind of a nutshell, they do talk about the broken windows theory and how that's a perception of crime. When you see a broken window, there's a perception of crime. And we definitely had at least some type of perception of negativity at Wells Park. I think we can all say that. And what you learn at CPTED training are 3 components, or 3 tiers. Really is natural surveillance, and that's something very basic where your bushes or your shrubs are no higher than 2 feet. Your tree canopies are higher than 6 feet, so your public safety can see all the way through your park area. Your fencing is all see-through, and so, again, they can see all the way from the street side. And it's not only your law enforcement, but your park guardians, your dog park people, everybody that comes to your park, they're also making those calls for service. They're also guardians for your park. So really, a city wants to invest in that. Our Parks Division engineers, they were able to recalibrate the park to target that. Still, we weren't seeing the results we wanted, so we went to mechanical surveillance. And that's working with IT, the traffic division, and other parts of Public Works to get cameras in the parks. And still, we weren't seeing the results we wanted. And finally, we went to organized surveillance. And you look, you have the 2 park rangers right there. So a lot of those contacts, and would only make an assumption, but a lot of those contacts I do know come from our park rangers, and making those contacts with people in our parks. And that's really the bigger part of it, is having the presence in the park. And so having that with our Parks Division, having that with our big partners in law enforcement. And one thing you do learn in CPTED training is that this is not a law enforcement problem. This is, as a team within a city, we need to work together. And that's where I want to have Tim come in. Tim's not always one to sing his praises, so I'm trying to force him to sing his praises today, and talk about a little bit about his background and his presence within Wells Park, and how that human factor has also changed. So Tim, take it over.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. As Frank mentioned, my name is Tim O'Melia, and I'm the current Recreation Services Supervisor stationed at Wells Park. But to kind of go into a little bit of my background, as Frank put it, prior to my time with El Cajon, I spent several years working with the homeless population in downtown San Diego. Initially, I started at the Toussaint Academy, which is a group home for homeless and runaway teenagers, ages 14 to 18. My role there was to provide wraparound services, this including educational case management, specific life development skills, as well as just, providing a quality experience for these teenagers. From there, I spent 2 additional years as a team leader at Father Joe's Villages. Now, my role there specifically was I oversaw and worked on 2 separate grant-funded programs, specifically rapid rehousing programs that focused on housing for homeless veterans, as well as homeless transitional age youth, and those ages were 16 to 24. And during this time, I quickly learned that there's just so many variables and factors that go into individuals experiencing homelessness. But through the training I received there and the opportunities I had, I was able to develop certain skills and the knowledge to be able to work with this population. So with this background and experience, I quickly was able to transition to my position, as I stated, as the current Recreation Services Supervisor at Wells Park. I started in the summer of 2019, and during that time, Wells Park had gone several years without a full-time recreation staff presence. And early, what I noticed on at the park was there was a significant increase in chronically homeless individuals in large encampments at the park. Additionally, with this, there was an increase in negative behavior that we were receiving at the park. Daily park checks would lead to a high volume of calls to our police department. And then to be transparent, outside of the off-leash dog park area, this park was a bit underutilized. Members of the community were essentially had concern for safety to come to the park. So, the goal from the onset was to change the narrative of Wells Park, to change it from it being a perceived dangerous space into more of an asset for the community. There were two early objectives that we saw as important strategies and wanted to highlight to reach this goal. The first was for myself to begin utilizing the skills, knowledge, and training that I had received during my time at Father Joe's to be able to engage the homeless population at the park, steering them towards necessary resources, but most importantly, ensuring that their activities did not compromise the safety of other park users. And secondly, a second objective, and just as important in my observation, we had a full court press, a steady push to activate Wells Park. We wanted to activate it through recreation-based programming, as well as engaging the community through various special events. The following slides will kind of go into some of these specific highlighted events and programming. So the first success that we saw was the implementation of an outdoor mobile recreation program. Many of you have probably seen this at the park, or better yet, you've probably seen our orange van driving around the city. The City of El Cajon's mobile rec squad has been a staple and a key element into activating Wells Park since its creation in April 2019. Ultimately, this program, it serves as a free after-school drop-in opportunity for members of the community to engage in positive play, as well as physical well-being and activeness. And then one thing we did highlight with this program is we really wanted to be available during those critical after-school hours, specifically 2 p.m. to 6. Another successful strategy in activating Wells Park was a series of community engagement events. Many of you have actually participated in these events, as pictured there. We had the Arbor Day last year, the tree planting. Some of these other events included our Dump Day and Shred and Mulch Day in conjunction with our Public Works Department, as well as the trash provider EDCO. These events, were an opportunity to draw the community back into the park, to provide not only services, but a sense of ownership for them to come to the park and really be a part of a positive aspect. And then probably our most popular addition to the programming in Wells Park has been the creation of 2 seasonal special events. The first you can see there is our Winter Wonderland event. We've been able to host 2 successful events starting in 2019. And our most recent Winter Wonderland event, we had over 1,000 community members come out and enjoy a day at the park and even play in the snow. Additionally, we wanted to target the summertime. So in conjunction with some of our other parks, we created a Summer Movies in the Park series, whereas before we were only offering one movie in the park option at our Renette Park. Now we were able to not only at Wells Park, but our other parks provide up to 8, sometimes 10 offerings during the summer. And lastly, kind of as Frank mentioned, not only with the community engagement events, but there were several park improvements that we had. Specifically, I wanted to highlight 2 of the infrastructure improvements. The first being, as Frank mentioned, the Kaboom Playground refresh in 2019. But secondly, I do want to kind of highlight again the mini pitch soccer court that was completed in January 2021. I can say this is, every day I open up that mini pitch at 9 o'clock and there's at least 2 or 3 people trying to get on and play. And then during that after school time, you can see up to 30 youth, specifically from the local high school, that are there and they're just running games and enjoying the park. So that's just been a huge park improvement that ultimately has continued to help us keep up with the activation of Wells Park. And so lastly, that leads us to Wells Park today. Because of the activation of the park through positive programming and community engagement events, as well as a steady approach into speaking directly with the homeless population, we've seen a tremendous improvement to the perception and the overall function of the park. Today, you'll see the return of passive recreation use, such as picnics, birthday parties on the weekends, and just simply seeing families enjoy the outdoor space. We've seen the resurgence of youth sports leagues permitting and using the 2 sports fields. On the weekends now, you can come around 10 o'clock and you'll see a soccer game going on as well as a full-blown baseball game. And lastly, while it's still a working process, there's been a significant decrease in negative park behavior from the homeless population, and this is due to our overall activation of the park. And then personally for myself, as I continue to be stationed at the park in my role, I want to use my ability to treat the homeless individuals with compassion and dignity, steering them towards available resources, recognizing they have every right to use the park, but most importantly, ensuring that their activities just do not compromise the general safety of other park users. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions? Thanks for the nice report. I appreciate that. All right, staff, do you have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
Council? Brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below with the concurrence of the City Council. A council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull on any of the consent items? Staff?
No, sir.
Make a motion. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for consent items?
We have no speakers, sir.
All right, I make a motion then to approve the consent items. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, that brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda can be heard at the time that the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions. An item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
We have no speaker cards.
All right. There are no written communications on today's agenda. We have one administrative report on today's agenda. Item 7 is regarding the Transnet funding for MTS operations. And I'll ask our city manager to please tell us about this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Councilmember Goebel represents the city on the MTS board, and he brought this matter to the council's attention that due to some shifts going on at Sandag, there's a potential that MTS will lose some of its funding that was promised or guaranteed as part of the Transnet approval in 2004. Based on that concern, staff has prepared a resolution supporting MTS's continued receipt of Transnet sales tax funds, and staff's available for any questions that you may have.
All right, council, any questions?
Can you explain this to me, please?
Certainly. In 2004, going back when Transnet was approved by the voters, by almost 2 million voters actually approved it, there was some money, actually 8.1% of all the Transnet revenue was to be dedicated specifically for the services that MTS provides. It does not say thou shalt pay MTS 8.1%, but it says that you'll pay for mass transit and the other services that MTS provides. There is a concern that MTS is expressing that they're not going to receive that amount of money because there's other priorities, because there was an overcalculation of, or an overestimation of how much Transnet money would be received. Now there's a shortfall in Transnet money to accomplish all the projects they have. So there's some wrangling going on to determine how that money will be divided up, and there's a concern that MTS will receive less. Now, and Mr. Goebel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this amount of money makes up at least 10% of MTS's overall budget. So this shortage of funding will result in probably, in my mind, probably reduced services because there's no other place to take that money from. Or, and most of their capital projects are different funding sources. This is just operational money, so there potentially is less stops, less bus routes occurring. So that's the concern. This resolution pushes or encourages the Sandag Board of Directors to follow the wishes of the voters in 2004 that voted for Transnet and continue funding MTS at its full 8.1%.
Okay, thank you. I thought the money was coming from us, and I just needed clarification on
Nope.
that. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? All right, Angela, do we receive any comments for this item?
No comment cards, sir.
All right. It's just administrative report. Is there any further discussion, or would someone like to proceed with a motion?
I'll move that the council adopts the next resolution order.
Second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, there are no commission reports on today's agenda. Item 8 is my activities report. We're at activities reports for council members. Councilmember Goebel.
One correction, there was no press conference yesterday on the Working Families Ordinance, otherwise as reported.
Councilmember Kendrick.
As reported.
Councilmember Ortiz. Councilmember Mitchell.
As reported.
There are no first or second readings of ordinance and no closed sessions on today's agenda. And this brings us to adjournment of the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 8th day of February 2022, which is now adjourned until tonight, Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at 7 o'clock p.m. See you then.